Hey, everybody. Glad you could be here today. All right, we're going to be doing some Ecclesiastes. Let's see, give everybody a minute or so to join us. Got to shut that down. Too many windows, too many windows. Hey, we got 4 here. All right, so that counts as a quorum in my book, and just getting the windows adjusted. Got a lot of different things that I want to to share with you today that we haven't done. We're going to do a little textual criticism. Let's see, there we go. All right, we don't really need to see me too much. That's not important. Got that, and got to get our chat here. Let's see, what religion army am I? Sorry, I can't talk. Just got off the basketball court actually. So what religion am I? I'm actually a Christian pastor, so I happen to be a Christian by faith, but but I've spent a lot of time in. Sorry, I'm just trying to figure out why this isn't scrolling, but spent a lot of time at Jewish Theological Seminary. Geez, roughly what was it? About 10 years or so, something like that. And I'm just bringing our. Sorry, I just want to bring our chat over so that we can do that. I'll finish answering your question 1 second and get this going. All right, there we go. And yeah, let's see, just give me 1 second. Boom. All right, move that over a touch. And yeah, we'll be ready to go here. All right. That should do the trick. Something like that. Okay. And then we'll get Ecclesiastes up. We'll put the chat over this for now. And I think we are finally good to go here. Okay. All right. So so just getting back to the comments here. Have I ever engaged with Orthodox Christianity? Really interesting question. So I teach at Canterbury School in New Milford, Connecticut. It's a private boarding school, a Catholic boarding school. But as a Protestant, I'm the chair of the theology department. But one of the cool things about Canterbury is that obviously we have a Catholic priest there. I'm a Christian minister, a Protestant minister, I should say. And one of the math teachers is actually an Orthodox priest. And so we have Catholicism, Protestantism, and Orthodoxy represented, and with our offices all right next to each other. So it really is a fantastic, very collegial environment. And so I actually have a number of books that I purchased recently. So I don't do a whole lot with Orthodoxy on my own, up until this point anyway. But I do plan on doing some stuff. It's probably going to have to wait until the summer before I'll actually have time to do it justice. But yes, we will be talking specifically about the Hebrew scriptures of the Old Testament in the Orthodox tradition. And so, so that will be something coming up. And so, yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, and anything that that you'd like to hear me talk about with regard to that. Very good. All right. Awesome. Well, I'm so glad everybody's here today, and I know we'll have others joining in. Give me 1 second. I forgot to set our little goal here for that. So Q&A session live with me. There we go. So we're looking to looking to get five supers for this live stream here. I know some of you are already supporters. Thank you so much. I'm not asking for anything else out of you for sure, but for those who might be new, and if you like what you hear, you like what you see, then maybe consider dropping a few bucks to help out the cause. All right, well, let's get started. So we have, let's see, let me get the right window up. Here we go. And I just want to make sure that you guys can, oh, that's not the window I want. Sorry. There we go. And we just got to shift this. Oh, I want to shut off the interlinear. Sorry. There we go. All right. So we're going to shrink that. And then we're just a little bit, we got to, sorry, I really apologize. I thought I had this window set right. I just want to get it, so you can see everything here, because I think I'm cutting off the Aramaic and the Greek a little bit. Okay. So there we go. That's way better. Okay. So I'm going to have to shrink it a little bit for us to see that. But all right, now we can see everything, hopefully. Okay. I canceled my Netflix for this. No pressure. I love it. I love it. I love it. All right. Let's see. So yeah, all right. I guess I'm going to have to deliver today. So and Jank, I am going to deliver today, because we are going to do something not only with reading the text, but with textual criticism, and we're going to look at a medieval manuscript, actually the medieval manuscript on which basically all printed editions of the Hebrew Bible are based. So I am going to deliver in spades today. At least I hope that's the conclusion you'll come to. So, all right, so let's do this. Let's do this. So here we go. So we've been going through, just for those who are new, just to recap a little bit, we've been going through Ecclesiastes. We've gotten through about 9 verses so far in chapter 1. And what is before you on the screen is, we've got in the center, we've got the Hebrew, I'm sorry, I don't know why this blinks so much when I do this, but we've got the Hebrew text top center. That's the Masoretic text, I should say, and, which is the standard received text of the Bible, and then of the Hebrew Bible. And then below it, I just put the ESV for convenience sake, and I probably bring this down. Let me just shrink this a little bit. There we go. That's better. And then we can increase the size of the Hebrew. Okay. And so the ESV is essentially based on the Hebrew. And then over to the right, we've got the Targum in the top right, and that is going to be a medieval translation, a Jewish translation of the Hebrew scriptures into Aramaic. And below is my translation of it, which I produced for Accordance Bible Software some years ago. So if you're interested, you can buy the module. I don't get a cent from that. They paid me a long time ago. So no royalties, not promoting it for that reason. So, and then we get the Septuagint over here, the Greek, Old Testament, or however you choose to refer to it. And below it is the NETS, the New English Translation of the Septuagint. And there we go. So that's what we're looking at. So what I want to do, though, is do a little bit of textual criticism today. And I want to talk about Masorah. And so Masorah is a medieval, system of quality control that Jewish scribes added to the text. There were different schools of Masorah. The one that was the leading school is the Tiberian Masorah. And the main, the main text that we use to access the Masorah is actually the Leningrad Codex. That's how most people are familiar with it. If you've ever read from Biblia Hebraica Quinta or Biblia Hebraica Stuttgartensia, you will see that there are Masoretic notes. Okay, so what we're looking at here in BHS, which is the 4th edition of Biblia Hebraica, it's the most recent complete scholarly edition of the Hebrew Bible, completed. Okay, but the new one, and I'm going to open up here. Okay, we're going to shift over to BHQ, and I'm going to open this up in the Megillot fascicle and show you the difference. Oh, we got Gabs on. All right. Hello from Connecticut. Glad you could be with us. All right. We've had a few people from Connecticut today. This is awesome. Okay. And so we also get the commentary here. Okay. And I put my phone on Do Not Disturb, and of course it keeps ringing. It just, I don't understand. Okay. And then we get the apparatus. And so what we're going to do is look at this. Let me just, man, I'm so sorry. All right, I need a broadcast manager here. So anyways, so what we find here is when we look at BHQ, which is the most recent. Hey, welcome Australia. All right, so glad you could be with us. Shalom, shalom. All right, Baruch haba. And we're going to go to Ecclesiastes, okay? And I'm going to increase the size of the text. And what you're going to notice, this is in BHQ here. I'm just looking over to make sure that we can see everything. I'm going to have to move, just move the chat. I'm going to just shrink the chat here for a second because we need to see the text. All right. And go over here, and we should be good now. Okay. So, all right, so we go over to BHQ, and let's read Ecclesiastes 1:1 in the Hebrew. So we've got Divrei Qohelet ben David melech Yerushalayim. So, and those, we'll slow it down in case you're not as, familiar with the text. So Divrei Qohelet ben David melech Yerushalayim, the words and affairs of Qohelet, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. Okay, and you know what? I forgot. Let me put the, I'll put the ESV up here with you. We'll just swing that over here, and I'm more interested in the Hebrew text. That's what we're focusing on here. Okay, so there's the. It should be good, I guess, right? Okay. Now, we're going to go back, and I want you to look at this. First of all, look at the presentation of the text there. Okay, highlight it just because that's what we're on. And now I'm going to go over to BHS, which is the older one. Does anybody notice anything different between verse 1 in BHS? I'll increase the size a little for you here. What is the difference between BHS and BHQ? So there's BHQ, Biblia Hebraica Quinta, the 5th edition, the most recent one. Here's BHS, top center. Hey, shalom, shalom. All right, we've got Jerusalem represented today. We've got Melbourne, Australia. I know we've got Europe, sort of represented there, right? And Connecticut. All right, it's always important to have Connecticut too. All right, so for those who just joined the broadcast, we're comparing two editions of the Tanakh. The first one is Qohelet 1:1 in BHS, so Biblia Hebraica Stuttgartensia, which is the, internationally, this is the most commonly used scholarly edition of the Hebrew Bible, okay? The most commonly used edition. And then BHQ, Biblia Hebraica Quinta, which is BH5, it's the most recent one, okay? And I'm asking everybody, what is the difference between the text that you see here and the text that you see here? So BHS has Divrei Qohelet ben David melech Yerushalayim, okay, same text. BHQ has Divrei Qohelet ben David melech Yerushalayim. It's the same text. So what's the difference? Anybody catch it? I'll give it another second, and then we'll see if we get any chats there. All right. And the answer is, I don't see anything coming through. The answer is, if you look between the first two words of the text, Divrei Qohelet, there's a circle. Okay? And it's this circle up here. We call it a circillus in scholarship. Some people will refer to it as a circule, but you'll hear me use the term circillus. Hey, we got Alexandria, Virginia represented. Angela, glad to have you back. Glad to have you back. All right. Got two members with us today. Thank you guys for your membership and support of the channel. Angela and Jank, really appreciate it. Really, really appreciate it. All right. So what we're pointing out here is that in BHQ, between the words, that you were right. Yeah. So Ty, you were absolutely right. It's a small circle. This is what we call a circillus. And in the manuscript of the Leningrad Codex, I'm going to put this in the chat. Oops. I just got off the basketball court. and my fingers are still shaking. I was, working out with the high school kids. At 48, I'm trying to, keep up with these kids. All right, I live between Jerusalem and the Dead Sea, close to Jericho. Okay. All right, Ma'ale Adumim, not far from East Jerusalem, the old city where, interesting. I'd love to talk with you sometime. I'm actually going to be in your neck of the woods this summer, probably in July. Actually, I'll be over there for 2 weeks, and I have, an agenda over there, and would love to meet up, for anybody who's in that region and is interested. But anyways, so awesome. So the Leningrad Codex, okay, the Leningrad Codex, which I'll bring up on the screen in a minute. Okay, I just realized I never downloaded it to this computer. My other computer's in the shop. Is an 11th century, early 11th century manuscript. Okay, early 11th century manuscript, and that is the it is the oldest. Now, hear me clearly, okay? So I don't want to be misrepresented. It is the oldest complete Hebrew Bible. Okay? It's not the oldest Hebrew Bible, it's the oldest complete Hebrew Bible that is still in existence. So, in fact, just there. So the Leningrad Codex is the oldest, and I'll put this in all caps, complete, extant, that means still in existence, Hebrew, and of course, Hebrew Bible. Okay? Yep. All right. So, and that is the manuscript on which most Hebrew Bibles are based, because it's the oldest complete one, at least most modern Hebrew Bibles, I should say. Okay? And so that's what we're going to look at. So I'm bringing the Leningrad Codex up for you right now, and let's see. Of course, it doesn't want to open the PDF for some reason, so it's opening up. I'm going to have to share my screen with you. Bear with me. This is worth it, I promise. I know I don't like to have dead time during these broadcasts, but here we go. There we go. And let's see. Google Drive, Chrome. Nope, that's not what we want. Leningrad Codex. Here we go. Okay, so I'm just going to shift this around a little bit so I can maximize it for you and you can see it more clearly, okay? So we'll do this, we'll do that. So this is early 11th century. People argue the date, a few years here, a few years there, whatever. But if you want to know what the manuscript is that your Hebrew Bibles are based on, here it is. Okay. All right. And we're going to shut that off for the moment. I'm going to move this over. Hopefully everybody can see it okay. All right. This allows us to actually enlarge the chat a little bit so everybody can see that. Okay. All right. Good, good, good. And just let me know if you have any trouble seeing it. So the Leningrad Codex, this is an 11th century manuscript here, okay? And man, I'm still getting used to PCs here, so I got to figure out how to, you got to punch in the page number. It's such a pain in the neck. But we're going to look at Qohelet here and go down. We got to, boom, boom, whoops, didn't mean to do that, sorry. Okay. And we got to go over to, this is so much easier on a Mac. I'm really not a Mac snob, but there we're in Job. We'll go to 850 here. All right, here we are, Ecclesiastes. Okay, so everybody remember that. We're starting on page 848 of the PDF, and there we go. Okay. All right, so yeah, we got the end of Song of Songs, and then Ecclesiastes begins here, and let's zoom in, okay? So, okay, and let me just make sure everybody can see that, okay? There we are. All right, now, these words here say Divrei Qohelet. I'm going to zoom in a little more for you, the best I can. There we go. There's our column. And if you look here, we have the word divrei, exactly like it appears in the manuscript, and we have Qohelet, okay? And you see the surcillis here, okay? Now, what the surcillis does is the surcillis is there to the Masoretes, the scholars who who put this quality control system in. We're gonna call it, okay? Said in order for you to know that there is a notation in the margins, you see these. Well, I got to zoom out for you to see them. So, okay, you see these notes in the margins here. Okay, there's our divrei Qohelet, and then to the right and to the left, and at the headers and footers of the page as well. But what they'll do is they'll put this surcillis in to say, dear reader, there is a note in the margin. Okay, and so what they do in this case is they say, okay, since the surcillis is in the margin, it means the note applies to both the first word and the second word. In other words, it applies to the phrase. And the note that this corresponds to is this. Does anybody know what this is? Go ahead and put it in the chat if you would. What is this notation here? I'm just going to, the screen may move for 1 second here. Okay, I'm just going to stretch this out a little bit. There we go. Okay, and let's kind of move it over there. This allows me to see everything. And let me just fix our window capture here. Whoops, what did I do? What did I do? There we are. Okay, boom. Okay, there we are. Okay. Kind of increase that for you. All right. Yeah, so Jank, I see your question. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. Don't let me forget about it. Ty, yeah, not sure of the notation, but if I was still a child, a giraffe. Yes, and you're not the first person to say that. But this is actually the letter Lamed, okay? It's the letter Lamed. And Hebrew letters also have numerical value. Now, you might say, okay, well, what's the numerical value of Lamed? That's right, Angela, you got it. And so the numerical value of Lamed is normally 30. So for instance, if you wanted to write 31 using Hebrew letters, you use Lamed, Aleph. So Lamed is for 30, Aleph is for 1, Lamed, Aleph, 31. The only thing is, when you want to say there is one of something in this style of notation, you would think you'd use an aleph, which would be the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet. You don't, you use a lamed, okay? And it doesn't stand for 30 in this case. When the lamed is by itself, it means it's an Aramaic term, okay? Yeah, dude really like to exaggerate the lamed. Yeah. Man, I'm really having trouble with the, with the Mac here, with the PC. It's like, you forget, whoops, there we are. Okay. It's an Aramaic word, leta. A lot of these notations, even though the scripture is in Hebrew for the most part, the notations are generally in Aramaic. And I'm wondering if anybody knows what leta means. Okay, so the word leta, it literally means there is not another. There is not another. Okay, so if you want to say there is not in Aramaic, leta. Leta. Okay, sometimes it's abbreviated to late, but in the manuscript, it is generally just abbreviated with a lamed. And so the dot over the lamed is, it indicates in its abbreviation, and it means this phrase that the surcillis is connected to, which in this case is divrei Qohelet, it occurs one time and only one time in the Hebrew scriptures. Okay. Now you might say, why did they bother? Okay. I'm not going to get into the interpretation of it right now, but the first book that I published, if you ever look at that, don't buy it, please, because it's almost $200, and I won't see a penny of it anyway. But unless you're independently wealthy, I wouldn't recommend buying it. But I'll share some pages with you sometime. But I did my first book actually deals with a corpus of about 400, I forgot what it was, 415 of these notations, okay? And it means there is not another, okay? So, Divrei Qohelet ben David melech b'Yerushalayim, the scribes are saying, dear reader, this occurs once and only once, and a lot of times it is for the spelling to make sure it's spelled correctly and that kind of thing, not to be confused with something else in the scriptures, okay? All right, and feel free to throw your questions in there while I'm waiting for questions. Thank you for all the members and those contributors who are part of the broadcast. Anybody who's willing, no guilt here, but anybody who's willing, we're trying to get 5 supers, any level, just for this broadcast to help with the, to help continue funding the project. So if you can do that, great, really appreciate it. All right, so Angela has a question. Does the Leningrad Codex contain all of the intentional misspellings like a, okay, hold on, let me make sure I'm reading this right. All of the intentional misspellings like a mem sophite, in the middle of the word. So the Masorah deals with those issues. So when I say Masorah, and in Hebrew we would say Masorah, but in American scholarship everybody says Masorah. American Jews tend to retract stress from words. So the first time an author says, don't buy my book. Don't buy that one. If you want to buy one, buy Jesus's Bible. It's like $25 or $9 on Kindle, and that's actually more approachable. So, but yeah. So the Masorah deals with that. When I say Masorah, or if you want to pronounce it with Hebrew pronunciation, Masorah, which means something to the effect of tradition hang on one second, I gotta shift keyboards here. Shift. Okay, Masorah. You'll hear me use the adjectival form Masoretic. I can't type on my word. Okay, Masoretic. That's the adjective. Okay. So anyways, in the Masorah we get scribal notations. So Nanavon. You're absolutely right. So in the late, I got to think for a second here. In the late 19th century, there was a Jewish scholar, who became Christian. He converted to Christianity. His name was Christian David Ginsburg, and his scholarship largely dealt with this. And he republished a work from the 16th century by a Jewish scholar named Elias Levita. That's at least the Greek form of his name. His first name was Eliyahu. Okay, and it was called Masoret HaMasoret. Masoret HaMasoret. So you're absolutely right, which basically means the tradition of the Masorah. Masorah HaMasoret. In scholarship, there's a lot of confusion as to exactly what the term meant in the Middle Ages when it was used. So it's one thing to say what it means, what the term, how it could be used today, but there is some confusion. But yeah, you will find older Masoretic works. I may, sorry to turn my back to you guys. I usually keep my Masorah stuff, all of it, right behind me. Yeah, here you go. This is exactly what I'm talking about. So Elijah ben Asher, Elias Levita. Where's my camera? Okay, hopefully you guys can see that. So the Masorah HaMasoret of Elias Levita, okay, who worked on the Rabbinic Bible. Yeah. And so today, all scholars, Jewish and otherwise, refer to this as Masorah when we're speaking English and Sorah when we're speaking Hebrew. Yep. This is a reprint. Man, if you want to understand the history of the Hebrew Bible in the Middle Ages, you could probably buy a copy of this for like $1 on Amazon because it's a reprint. Like this was, I don't know who printed it, but if you want to take a screenshot there, you can do that. Okay. But here's the title one more time. Go ahead and screenshot it if you're so inclined. Fascinating stuff in here, but that's for another video. In any event, so the Cercillus, which now we're going to go back and we're going to put the Hebrew up and get rid of that. Put up I'm going to remove the chat just for 1 second. Okay, so in BHQ, Divrei Qohelet, Ben David, Melech Birushalayim. Okay, all right, so there you go. And that Cercillus comes right out of the manuscript there. And then what BHQ does, we're going to go over here in the commentary here, right? That's the apparatus. And let's just go to Ecclesiastes 1 and well, I'll bring that up for you later. I don't want to waste time here in the let me see if I can get this. Yeah, that's just the text critical. Oh yeah, here you go. Here you go. Okay. So yeah, there we are. I'm sorry the type is so small, but you see here, and this is from BHQ from the commentary, chapter 1, there's a text critical issue, which we'll talk about in a minute. But then over here it says MP. Okay. And MP, I'll put this in the chat for you. Using the Latin terminology, we call this Masora Parva. That is how English-speaking scholars will refer to it, Masora Parva. And it comes from the Hebrew term Masorah Ktana, which means small Masorah, Masorah Ktana. And the small Masorah are those notations that are in the margins there, to the right and to the left of the biblical text. We call that Masorah Ktana, or in English scholarship, in English scholarship, Masora Parva. Okay. Yep. All right. Now, you might say, why does this matter? Well, I'll tell you why it matters. I'll give you one reason why it matters for the time being. It is very important, in my opinion. Sorry, chat. Boom. There we go. It is very important, in my opinion, that we not only understand what the biblical text says, but that we understand how the biblical text was transmitted. Okay, that's why we look at why we look at the Targum, why we look at the Greek, why we look at the Dead Sea Scrolls, which we can look at later. Okay, it's because understanding the transmission of the Hebrew Scriptures is very important for understanding why people interpret the text the way they do today, why they interpreted the text the way they do in ancient times, and how that might impact how we understand it. Okay, and that has a great significance for theology. So when I'm teaching a theology class in standard Christian theology, there are 10 major doctrines or teachings that we talk about. It usually starts with, the first one is bibliology. And what bibliology, whoops, I spelled that wrong. Oh my word. Let's try it. Yeah. So, right. So, sorry, before I continue. So, Nanavon. So, parva is a Latin term. So, when it's used this way, Masora parva, it's because scholarship used to use the Latin terminology. And so, parva is a Latin term that means small. And so, when scholarship, like I'll show you for 1 second here. Bear with me a second. Where is Ginsburg? Here we go. All right. So, there's two types of Masorah. This is the big Masorah here. When it's talked about, actually, that doesn't really apply because they always use the. Did he ever use the term magna here? It's interesting. So the big Masorah used to be referred to as the Masorah Magna, the big Masorah. And I'm trying to see if that ever made it into this edition here. I'll show you in 1 second. Yeah, here we go. So check this out. So the Masorah Magna, these are the notes at the bottom of the page. Let me bring up the manuscript just so you can see it. Okay, and so boom. So you see that right there at the bottom of the page, and then you scroll to the top in the manuscript right there. This is used to be referred to typically, and sometimes still is, as the Masorah Magna. And there it is. Okay. And you can see just from this page that it was customary in biblical scholarship to use Latin. That used to be the case. And just, you can read it right there. That is not English, right? That's Latin. Okay, certainly not Hebrew. But notice on the next page, what do they call it? Soag Dolah. Soag Dolah. That's the Hebrew term. So when we deal with Masorah, some people will refer to it by the Latin name, Masorah Parva and Masorah Magna, and some people will refer to it, some scholars will refer to it by the Hebrew name, Masorah Ktana and Masorah Gdolah. Does that make sense? Just want to make sure that I'm making sense here. Yeah, so what is the Masorah Ktana? The small Masorah. That's what Ktana means, right? So these notes. This is the Ktana here. These notes. Gdolah is at the footer and the head. You can see these are longer notes. That's why it's called Big Masorah. But in between the margins, they're the small Masorah. Masorah Parva, Masorah Ktana. Yep. Hopefully that makes sense. I realize that, some people, they might just want to be looking at the Hebrew text. Oh, yeah, okay. I see your question. So looking at the chat there. Yeah, the way you're spelling Ktana. Okay, so it's a custom in biblical scholarship. And again, this is a modern Hebrew versus biblical Hebrew thing. Generally speaking, in American scholarship, when we transliterate Hebrew, the kuf is going to be written as a Q, and the kaf is going to be written as a K. It is not true all the time. Not everybody does this, but that is the custom. That's why I spelled it the way I did. And it's also customary to represent the schwa. Okay, that's why it's QE as opposed to KT. Hopefully that makes sense. These are just customs in American biblical scholarship. That's all. Yep. So, but I can understand the confusion there for, modern Hebrew, etc. So, all right, good. So anyways, but that is the Masorah. Now, this is not going to be, you don't do it in Israel. I totally get that. Totally get that. So anyways, from time to time, we're not going to go through all these Masoretic notes because I understand people want to read the biblical text, but it's important. If we're really going to read the biblical text and interpret it, we need to understand what we're actually reading. And when we read the Hebrew Bible, no problem. Happy to explain. When we read the Hebrew Bible in a printed edition or an electronic edition, this is it right here. It's the Leningrad Codex. Okay, 11th century manuscript. Okay, all right. And this contrasts with synagogue manuscripts where there are no vowel marks and there are no Masorah. So when someone's in shul or in synagogue reading from the script, or reading from the manuscript, the Torah manuscripts do not have all of these Masoretic editions. Okay. All right, cool. So what do you say we read some Hebrew now, though? Okay, so let's do a little review. I should probably create some quizzes online. I'm not going to do that this week, but maybe next week I'll do that. Okay, so let's just let's make the manuscript go away for a little bit. There we go. And we're not going to read the Aramaic Targum or the Greek right now. So why don't I just, can I do this? Let me just stretch this out a bit so that you can read it, and I'll commit the grave sin of putting myself over the Targum here. Okay, there we go. All right, so here we go. We're in this, the front here. Okay, so Divrei Qohelet ben David melech b'Yerushalayim, the words of Qohelet, son of David, king in Jerusalem. Okay, we've covered that in previous videos. If you'd like, more insight on that, great. Just check out those videos. Okay, all right, and then we get Havel Havalim Amal Qohelet, Havel Havalim Hakol Havel. So, Hevel, Interesting term. You may recall that we said in previous videos that the word hevel originally has to do with things that are fleeting. So Adam and Eve had, initially 2 children. Okay, one we say in English his name was Cain. The other one we know, or we would say in English his name was Abel. But in the Hebrew Bible, it is written Hevel. Okay, in ancient Israel, in biblical days, it would have been pronounced Abel, and that's a historical Hebrew, or Habel, I should say. That's a historical issue, and I'll tell you why we know that for some other time. But it would have been Habel, but that changed to Hevel over time as Hebrew evolved as a language. And it's interesting that his name means something that's fleeting, and no sooner is Abel introduced in the text, and he's dispatched, we will say, a YouTube-friendly word, okay? But many scholars think, Michael Fox in particular, a Jewish scholar, say that the best meaning for Hevel in Ecclesiastes is absurdity, okay? It's related to the fleetingness, but it may be absurdity. I'm going to let you judge as we go through the book. Okay, so absurdity of absurdities, or Hevel of Hevels, if we don't want to translate it right now, says Qohelet. Who's Qohelet? We don't know yet, right? Havel Havalim, the greatest of vanities, everything is vanity. Hakol Havel. That's the pausal form, okay? And then chapter 1 and verse 2 is the thesis of the book. The thesis, that is his thesis. That's what he's driving home. Chapter 1 and verse 3 is the fundamental question. Okay, the fundamental question. Okay, Ma yitron la'adam b'chol amalo sheyamol tachat hashamesh. Okay, what lasting gain is what Ecclesiastes means with this word. What lasting advantage or lasting gain, not something temporary or relative. What lasting gain is there to a man, or you could say, what lasting gain does a man have? Because we really don't have a verb to have in Hebrew. Okay, it's represented in biblical Hebrew with the preposition le. Whoops, didn't mean to do that. You get out of here. There we go. Okay, so what lasting gain does a man have from all his toil? By the way, in Hebrew, this typically means in, but especially in ancient times, it actually meant from. So it's a legitimate translation. We know that from a lot of other ancient evidence. But what lasting gain does a man have from or in all his toil, amalo, that he toils under the sun, which means in this world. Okay, that's the Peshat. Okay, so, and then that's his question. The answer to the question is nothing. Everything is Hevel. Okay, and the book centers around verses 2 and 3. If we don't really internalize verses 2 and 3, we don't understand the book. Okay, all right. So then there's a poem, right? He loves poems. Dor holech v'dor ba. Okay, a generation goes and a generation comes. The ha'aretz le'olam omadet. Okay, but the earth remains forever. Now, we have to be careful with the Hebrew word olam. Okay, sometimes, by the way, the word olam means world. Okay, but le'olam is often translated into English as forever. But if we're understanding Hebrew according to how it was used in ancient times, all right, Hebraico Proficial. All right. Welcome. Shalom. Then olam really means remote time. Time off in the distance, but not the idea of eternity. Okay, we don't want to read forever as being eternity. We want to think of it as forever in the sense like, for the rest of our life. To my wife, I promise to love you forever. Do I mean eternity? Well, no, because we're not going to exist for eternity. It means for remote time, until remote time, long into the future, we might say. Okay? So the earth is going to exist long into the future, but the point is a generation goes and a generation comes. Okay? People are fleeting. Okay? They are, Hevel. Okay? All right? So verse 5, right? And we get V'zalach hashemesh uva hashamesh. There's the pausal form there. Shemesh is the normal form. Shamesh is pausal. Okay, so V'zalach hashemesh uva hashamesh. The sun sets and the sun rises, or so the sun rises and the sun sets. Okay, literally the sun comes. Okay, Ve'el mikomo shoef. Sorry, a little typo there in the text. Ve'el mikomo shoef, and to its place it pants. We said zoeach husham, and it returns to the place where it rises. We would say it hastens to the place where it rises. Okay, zoeach husham. Okay, and it it there, it rises. It's a little clumsy in the Hebrew because it's poetic. Okay, and then we said in verse 6, right? We've covered these in previous videos. That's why I'm going so quickly. Holech el darom v'sovev el tzafon. So it goes to the south and it turns to the north. Sovev, sorry, my eyes jumped as I was scrolling. Sovev, holech haruach. So the wind goes round and round, we would say. Ve'al svivotav shav haruach. Okay, and on its circuits, on its courses, the wind returns. And so, essentially the wind goes round and round. It's all circular. It never comes to an end. Generations of people round and round. It just keeps going. The same cycle continues. Never any end to it, right? We get the water cycle, right? So kol hanchalim, kol hanchalim holchim el hayam. So all wadis, you could say, or all streams, however you want to take that, go to the sea. V'hayam enenu maleh, and the sea is not full. Okay, so ein means there is of it. The sea, there is of it fullness. It's kind of a weird sort of expression in it doesn't have a not weird, but it doesn't correspond to English literally, right? So v'hayam enenu maleh, so the sea is never full, or the sea is not full. El mikom shehan chalim, and notice that el mikom. Notice the vocalization there, not makom, mikom. This is interesting. Okay, that's a construct form. So el mikom shehan chalim holchim. So and to we would read the place. El hamakom would be more normal, or just makom with a full a vowel. Okay, holchim. Sham, sorry, where were we? Sham, right there. So Sham hem shavim lalechet. So there they flow again. They return to go, if we want to be hyper literal, okay? But everything's just going round and round. And so kol hadvarim yeim lo yuchal ish ledaber. So all things are wearisome, and so much so that a person can't speak of it, okay? It's just so wearisome, okay? Yeah. Oh, there you go. Good. We got that cleared up. Yeah. So, and then we get lo tisba ayin lirot. The eye is never satisfied of seeing. The idea here is that seeing never comes to an end. Just like all the stuff previously in the poem, it never comes to an end. Velo timale ozen mishmoa. And the ear is never full of hearing. In other words, it just continues on and on and on, right? So everything in this poem here that basically begins Ecclesiastes is about stuff that never has a terminus or an end, okay? And then we get in verse 9, Mashaya hu sheyihyeh. So whatever has been is what will be. Mashaya, whatever has been, if you want to be hyper literal, what that it was, but we would say whatever was, hu sheyihyeh, is what will be. Whatever was is what will be. Okay? Uma shnasa hu sheyaseh. And what has been done is what will be done. What has been done is what will be done. Ve'en kol chadash tachat hashamesh. And there is nothing new under the sun. Okay? So and then verse 10 amplifies that. Yesh davar sheyomar ra'ezeh chadashu. Right? So there is a thing, there's a matter that someone says, sheyomar, that he says, that someone says, Reze, see this. By the way, Hebrew students from today, remember our Hebrew Arabic lecture? We went over the word ze, masculine singular demonstrative, meaning this, right? See this, Reze. Chadash hu. Literally, new it is. New it is. It is new. And Qohelet concludes, Kavah haya lo'olamim. So already it has been literally to the ages, past remote time. This is not eternity, because olam is also a past thing just as much as it is a future thing. It's remote time, distant time in the future and distant time in the past. It's not eternity, okay? So, kavah haya lo'olamim, asher haya milfanenu, is what was before us, okay? In other words, people look at life and they say, okay, oh, look at all this new stuff that's always developing. And Qohelet says, no, when you boil it down, anything that people say is new is not really new, okay? It's not really new. And when you're in pastoral work like I am, and one of the great honors of my life is being able to counsel people and to support people through not only the joys of life but the painful things. And what I have found is that the pain that a young person today might experience is it's the same type of pain that people experienced for hundreds and thousands of years. The circumstances change, but the core issue is always the same. Humans are humans, okay? All right, now let's pause. I've been doing a lot of talking at 100 miles an hour, and so Jank asks, call imperative masculine singular. So yes, re'eze, right? So this is a masculine singular. Call, or you can say pa'al, and I'm going to put this in the chat. So call, binyan call, we would say in Hebrew, or binyan pa'al. But in scholarship these days, for people who deal with multiple Semitic languages, we prefer, generally speaking, the term G-stem, okay? G-stem, and that is my German is terrible, I have to admit this, but for those of you who speak German, just correct me slightly on my pronunciation, but it's essentially Grundstem in German, which is the ground stem or the foundational stem. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, no, the word, I'm just looking at the chat. So, Nanavon, katan is small, not short. Yeah, it's, so when we say Masorah Ktana, we mean the small Masorah. Yeah. Okay, so Hebraico Proficial, G-stem is new to me. All right, I want to show you something that I think you'll find helpful, especially since on this channel we do a lot with Aramaic when we can. And so just bear with me as I open do I have a web page open? Oh, you know what I can do? Hold on. Hang on one second. So boom, and boom. Okay, so I've got what I'm going to do, I'm going to stretch that out like this. Here we go. And I've got to, bear with me. Okay, we're going to do this. Video capture, window capture. Yeah, window capture 3. Boom. Okay, here we go. Excellent. There we go. Comprehensive Aramaic Lexicon. This is the Aramaic resource for Aramaic scholarship, okay? No matter what dialect you're talking about, okay? And what we're going to do here, I'm just going to click this. Oh, the URL. Let me just... this is out of not Hebrew University. Hebrew Union College in Cincinnati. Okay. But anyways, we go here. All right, and I'm clicking search the Cal lexical and textual databases, and just as a sample, bear with me. I love the humor. All right, I'm going to go to Targum Studies module for now. So if you wanted to study the Targums, you can kind of see that there. And I'm going to browse a single Targum. And let's go to Qohelet. So we're going to go down here, Targum Qohelet, chapter 1. And I just need to zoom in. Hang on a second here. Still getting used to the, There we go. That should be a little better. Voila. All right. So I'm just reading the Aramaic text real quick here. And dun, da, 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 da. Oh, what verse did we say we were in? We're in 10. Is that where we were? Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong verse. That's why it's not showing up. Oh, you know what? Actually, verse 1's a perfectly good verse. All right, so Pitkamei Nevuah de Nabi Qohelet Hu Shlomo bar David Malka Dahava. Here we go. Which was in Jerusalem? Dahava B'Yerushalayim. Okay, so we're going to click on this word. Hava in Aramaic corresponds to Haya in Hebrew. Okay. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Jank, you're absolutely right. But it is a gold mine. It is an absolute gold mine. Yep. Okay, so here is the verb, and notice how the verbs are conjugated. There is the G stem, which is what we'd call pe'al, or it's the kal, same thing. Then there's the C stem. That's causative. In Hebrew, that would be the hifil, and the GT is something we don't even have in Hebrew. The CT is something we don't have in Hebrew, actually. And I'll talk about that some other time. But this is what is used, generally speaking, in Semitic languages these days. Okay? Will you find books that don't use it? Yes. Will you find scholars who don't use it? Yes. But this is the standard. And the reason for it is because you can't use Hebrew terminology for Aramaic. It doesn't work. And you can't use Arabic terminology for Hebrew, and so on and so forth. And that is why you hear me using G and D and C and GT and DT and CT and N. Okay, so that's the precedent there. So, all right, let me pause and take some questions. Let's get rid of that, and let's get rid of that. Okay, and we're back here in at the text. And while I'm waiting for questions, those of you who might be new to the broadcast, if you're liking what you're seeing, liking what you're hearing, and want to help support, we're shooting to get just 5 super chats at any contribution. And, for the people who are, contributing, you guys should have noticed that I've actually texted or sent you a message so that you can email me, and we're going to find a time to do a private chat. So for people who've done memberships and super chats and things like that, I want to reward you for helping me, and we'll find times to to have a private chat. We'll do like a Zoom call or something like that, so we can see each other face to face, and just do like a private Q&A thing. So thank you so much for considering supporting the channel. All right. Yeah, Jank, I'm a pre-dial-up, and AOL looks new to me. That's pretty funny. All right. So anyways, there we have it. So let's just... oh, Ty, here's your question. At 48 after basketball, where is it hurting now sitting in that chair? So, I actually am feeling pretty good. So I've been good this semester. But yeah, there have been some times where I got something going on in my left foot. The knees are pretty good, which I'm grateful for, but sometimes my left foot, we just got a little something funny going on there. So I do have to be careful. Today I was shooting in dress shoes, which is not smart. But all right, so Jank, what do you use for the polal? This is really interesting. So the polal, you're going to find people who disagree with me on this. The polal is really not a stem. And yes, Jank, I did see you, and I will get back to you. The polal is not really a Hebrew stem. It is a descriptive term, but it is really not its own. When you're dealing with the polal, you're talking about the D stem. It's a doubling stem, and so the term pa'al, right? It's pa'al in Aramaic, but pa'al in Hebrew. If you take a word, and Nanavon, you can correct me on this, but in modern Hebrew, there are different ways to call somebody on the phone, one of which is litalpein. Litalpein. It's not the only way to say it, but litalpein, which comes from the word telephone, but it's got in Hebrew a 4-letter root, tav, lamed, pe, nun. Yep. All right. So letalpain, it has this, it's this artificial stem, but it's based on the PL. It's just a modification of the PL. And so to do your question full justice, what I'd like to do, Jank, is I will try next week in the live stream schedule to actually go through Muraoka with you guys. And I'm going to show you his treatment of this and how he addresses it and talk about what's really happening with these stems. But yeah, let's, and you pronounce it not letalpain, but letalfain. Interesting. So yeah, that's interesting. So fe, not pay. Okay. Thank you for adding that. But yeah, that's one of the complications, and the way some of those odd verbs are treated is really artificial and not the way we ought to be thinking about it. So yeah, so we'll talk about the G stem and the D stem and how that applies there. Yeah, great question. Great question. All right, so let me just go over back to, and I'll keep my eye on the chat here. I got a few minutes left, and then I know my dog was actually in surgery today. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, because from telephone, so they carry it over. Okay. So my dog had to have just a little procedure done today, and so I got to go see my little buddy in a few minutes and check on him because I know he's not going to be himself, and he misses his daddy. So, all right. So Ecclesiastes 1:10, we already saw that. Okay, and then a great place to end is in 1:11, and then next Qohelet live stream or next Ecclesiastes live stream, we will pick up with verse 12, but here we go. So, ein zichron. Notice that this is not zikaon or zichaon, okay? It's zichron. This is late biblical Hebrew. It contracts the word. Ein zichron larshonim, okay? There is no remembrance to former things or former people. Okay, there is no remembrance to former things, or to the former things, I should really say, because there's an article there. La rishonim. Okay, v'gam la achronim, and to the latter things, or the latter people, sheyihyu, which will be lo yihye lahem zikaon. There will not be to them remembrance. Im sheyihyu lachona, among those who come after. Yep, among those who come after. Oh, like Zichron Yaakov. Yeah, it's a smichut. It looks like a smichut form. The only problem is it's not functioning as a smichut form. It's the same issue, by the way, Nanavon, there, that we have a few verses prior. I'm sorry, the way this is probably appearing on the screen. Where did the word mekom show up? Yeah, right here. El mekom she. And you're like, mekom, it should be makom, right? Instances of later biblical Hebrew, it would seem, okay? But yeah, so we get ein zichron laoshonim v'gam laachronim sheyihyu lo yihye lahem zikaron im sheyihyu laachrona. So there's no remembrance. Nobody's ever going to be remembered. And the people who are remembered are very few, and what's remembered of them is very small. So really, there is no real remembrance. Okay? And that is where we come to the end of the first section of Ecclesiastes, and it is a downer so far. Will it remain a downer, though? I don't know. Well, actually, I do know, but I'm curious to see what you guys think. All right, cool. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. Hopefully this is helpful. I know we spent a lot of time on the Masorah today, but at least in the future, now I can quickly reference some Masoretic things that will be really insightful, something more profound than what I showed you today, and you'll at least have some understanding to what is going on there. All right, cool. And if you're interested, I scheduled a live stream for late tonight just because I wanted to get some stuff in. So our elementary modern Hebrew class, we're going to be doing lesson 3. It's really simple stuff, but it's not really a modern Hebrew course. It's a biblical Hebrew course, but we start with some basic modern Hebrew so that we can ease our way into biblical Hebrew and it becomes more of a living language. Jank, I look forward to seeing you. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I'll see you on the flippity flip, and have a wonderful evening, day, wherever you are in the world. Really appreciate the fellowship we have.